Have you ever had a trainer or a front desk staff who overall is doing a really good job, but they're driving you bananas? In this video, I'm gonna help you unpack how to think about this to create the best path going forward for you, your employee, and your gym. My name is Mark Fisher from businessforunicorns.com, and in today's video, I wanna cover a question that was recently sent to me by a reader of our email newsletter. P.S. If you are not yet subscribed to the Business for Unicorns newsletter, you are missing out. Then head over to gymownerreportcard.com. You'll get an awesome free assessment that will help you understand exactly what to work on next to improve your training gym, and you'll get awesome emails. And maybe if you want, well, you can send me email questions too. And this particular email question was, and I quote, "How do you deal with someone who is important to your organization but have behaviors that drive you bananas, like forgetting to do tasks or being a drama queen, etc.?" Here's how I think it's best to think about this. First off, we want to be hyper specific about the behaviors to address, and we want to separate them from the story or the meaning we ascribe to the pattern that we're observing. Once we're clear on the behaviors that we don't want or the missing behaviors, we can focus on our preferred behaviors and hold them accountable over time. Now, sometimes the behaviors you're addressing are relatively easy to observe and to name. So for example here, when you have a standards-based violation, well, that's not that hard to address. In this question, as an example, is forgetting tasks. Assuming there is a specific, well-communicated, clearly documented expectation around what a given task is and when it needs to get done, well, that's pretty easy to address. So for instance, do you have a trainer constantly running late? Awesome! That's a pretty clear thing to address. There's no need to put a story around it. There's no need to assume that they're lazy or they don't care about the business or they hate your clients. You just hold them accountable to being on time. That is a behavior. Or another hack is, a behavior is anything that can be filmed. So you want to focus on things that a video camera could pick up on. Stories are not filmable. They're patterns. There's the meanings we ascribe to these patterns. Now, here's the distinction to understand. Sometimes stories are at least partially correct. It's possible this trainer is lazy or they don't like your business. It's not actually wrong to put together patterns and ascribe potential meaning. I think what's unhelpful here is to, first of all, focus on trying to manage the story instead of the behaviors. And number two, if you do have a story, you are detecting a pattern. I think it's only appropriate, and I might say ethical, to actually directly stress test that belief against the individual so they have an opportunity to fill you in, because in my experience, invariably, there are some gaps. In some cases, you'll find that you weren't actually as clear on the standard as you thought you were being in the first place. So the key thing here is that although I think it is okay to address the story, in addition to focusing on behavior, if you have developed a hypothesis, like a good scientist, you want to share with the individual with care for them, without robbing them of their dignity, with humility, with curiosity, and find out, is this true? Is part of this true? Are there other things that I don't know? Because admittedly, sometimes you're dealing with values violations, and invariably this is going to be a little bit more subjective, and it's very, very important to have a high-performing culture where everyone's singing from the same songbook, that values violations are addressed. But your key here is the same. You want to back out that story and identify, okay, well, what are the behaviors that have led me to create the story about this individual? So in this particular question, not only is this individual forgetting tasks, but they're being a drama queen. So we might want to ask ourselves, okay, well, what behaviors specifically are we seeing that are creating the story of drama queen? It could be, I observe you cutting off other team members when they're talking. I have observed that you rolled your eyes when Dave gave his suggestion. I noticed at the end of the meeting, you breathed heavily and exhaled out loud and got up abruptly when Emily gave her suggestion. Let me again remind you, if we want to successfully improve these behaviors, there needs to be documentation, and you need to have some process to properly escalate the conversation. You want to avoid having what I call accountability Groundhog Day.
It's Groundhog Day.
Where you have the same conversation over and over, but the behaviors don't seem to change. In my experience, sometimes that is because you, as the owner and the manager, are not actually making clear to this individual that things are, in fact, escalate. And the great news for you is I filmed a whole video on this. So go ahead, click the link in the description box below to find out how to really hold employees accountable. In closing, I want to touch on the last facet of this question I haven't yet addressed, which is when someone is important to the organization. I'll put that in quotes. Since I don't know the full context here, it's not clear to me if this individual has the power to let this team member go. But for our purposes, since I'm speaking to you, beloved gym owner, you do have the power to let people go. I'm going to interpret important to the organization, meaning is they do their job well. And to this, my closing thought for you is one of the most insidious ways cultures get destroyed is when bosses allow and overlook values violations, these squishy behaviors that admittedly are much harder to hold people accountable, particularly because they justify an employee's behavior as something they're willing to accept because overall their work is good. Here's the thing, if you sense that someone is having a negative impact on the culture of your gym, probably negative impact very subtly on your other team members, potentially even on the clients, I gotta tell you, this person has got to go. And yes, of course, you wanna escalate over time and give them a reasonable amount of chance to change the behaviors. But if you're finding that they're not able to adapt to the cultural standards that are important to you, if they can't live with your values, no matter how good their performance is, I promise you, you're much better off letting them go and finding someone else. The long-term benefit will be well worth the short-term pain. And if you need some help getting your mind around that, go ahead, click on the link in the video in the description box below on how to make hard changes in your training gym. All right, friends, this is Mark Fisher. Thank you so much as always for watching these videos. If you feel inspired while you're clicking around those links down there, I'm not gonna be mad at you if you hit the subscribe button. I'll see you soon for another video where I'll share more actual tips, psychological frameworks, and philosophy.